All right, so moving on with the RTS demo. Hopefully all your units are doing what they're supposed to and you're starting to display things. So my plan for this section is to actually take a look at how to put in buildings, which you probably have, but you might not have queuing up multiple units at the same in the same building. So my plan is actually to keep track of how many units are about to be built and slowly create those units. So to begin with, I should probably create some sort of building. How about a king? Sure, that's going to be my building. So I'm going to center that guy so that I can actually click on it, create a building. I'm going to create an object I'm going to call the button object, which is the one that sits down somewhere in the screen and actually is waiting for you to click on it to actually create a unit. I'm going to create an object which I'm going to call the drag object. You may remember this from tower defense. Has the same sprite. Create an object, which I'm going to call my building object. This is the one that I'm basically allowed to click on to make units. So to begin with, this guy, when he first has a key press, or I'm sorry, a mouse press, you can do a left press. First thing I should do is check my score, which is my resource. So I'm going to say if it's greater than or equal to, how about 50? Then I'm going to do an instance create of my drag object. And I'm just going to create it in my own x and y. I'm using a left press event so I don't get 3 or 4 drag objects that just instantly eats my score and puts them all in the same place. All right, the drag object, I have to be careful with this guy. If I put in a left press event and just create the building immediately, it'll actually, so what'll happen is I'll left click on the button object. The drag object will get created and it'll think, hey, you're clicking on me right now, and it'll immediately place it down, which I don't want. So I'm going to put in a create event and put in a variable which will keep me from having this problem. So I'm going to create a variable called camPlace, set it equal to 0 initially when it's first created. When I left press on this guy, I'm going to check that variable first. If camPlace is a 1, then I'm allowed to create the building object. I think I'm just going to actually change this guy into that. So I'm going to change into building _o. Perform events, if you say true here, it'll actually perform the create event in the new one. I might need that, so I'm just going to put it in. If you say false, it does not perform the create event. All right, so when I left release on this particular object, then I'm going to set my variable camPlace true to a 1 or true. They actually are the same thing. So in the create, it's a 0. When I release on it, it's a 1. When I left press, if it is a 1, change. Now this isn't doing the drag action. It's just creating it, but it's not following my mouse. I need that to happen. So every step, I'm going to set x equal to mouse _x, which is the variable holding my mouse's left and right. Y equals mouse _y. So the building is going to be the one that's eventually going to do the queuing. I put in a bunch of code, so I want to test that real quick. So let me make sure I put my button in here, make sure it runs. Uh-oh, I should have some score for this to work out. Let's see. Selection controllers in the room to start with. Score equals 200. I could go send workers, but I want to see if this works right now. All right. There we go, a building. Probably a better way to do this is the building sprite probably should actually look more like a button. The drag object should have maybe it's semi-transparent or something like that. And the building object should actually be the one that's the regular sprite. Rather than just saying that, let me actually do that. Building button sprite. Edit. You will have a filled in. Let's see, actually, is there a button eyes thing? Button eyes. It looks like that. OK. So you're going to have that one. The drag object. I'm going to set his alpha value to something that's less than 1. So alpha is the, it's basically a variable that holds how transparent something is. So I can set the alpha when I'm drawing. So you can clear the alpha, you can set the alpha, and you can set it between 0 and 1.0. So 0 is totally transparent. You can't see it at all because it is too clear for your eyes. 1 is fully opaque. All right, so that does mean that I'm going to need to change this guy's draw event. And actually, now that I think about it, why don't I go ahead and update the X and Y position in a draw event rather than having both a step and a draw? So GameMaker does step events, and at the very end of those, it does draw events. So I'm just going to change this to a draw. It won't draw my building sprite at the moment, so I'm going to have to do that again. I'm going to set my alpha to maybe 0.5, draw my sprite. Sprite index will draw whatever my current sprite is. Image index will draw my current subimage if I have an animated sprite, x, y. And then I'm going to set my alpha back to 1 when I'm done with this, so that I don't have semi-transparent stuff for everything else I draw. Looks like a button. We have this drag object, and it places. That is not transparent. Why is it not transparent? Oh, I probably needed the extended version. Yep, there it is. So I forgot that draw set alpha is for primitives. The extended version actually lets you do sprites. There's a whole bunch of extra stuff you have to put in, but one of those is alpha. So X scale. I don't want to scale it, so 1 is the scale I'm going to use. I don't want to rotate it, so I'm going to put in 0. White is the default color. Here we go. That's the alpha value there. There we go. Beautiful. That also means I don't need these two, so I'm just going to pull those out. All right, I got a building now. So what if I want to make a unit? So wherever I place my building, I want to make it so that maybe when I right-click on it, it creates, it basically takes some amount of time, and then it actually creates a new unit. So there's a couple things I need to be able to do here. The first thing is I should have some sort of event where I press on it. And if I have enough score, I'm just going to make these units like 5 or something. So I'm going to say if it's greater than or equal to 5, all right, so here's the part where I need to actually set an alarm. So I'm just going to try making 1 unit to begin with. So I'm going to make it take 2 seconds to build one of these guys. Once the alarm goes off, I'm going to create one of these units. So where do I want to create it is an interesting question. In my game, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it below me, and if that actually causes a collision, I'm going to have the unit itself move outside of the other object. So for now, X, Y, and the object I'm going to create is my unit. That might create units on top of each other. So in my unit, I'm going to add in a special event that if it collides with something else, it keeps moving until it is no longer in an object. So if this guy has a collision with, well, I'm going to use parent unit. There's a command called move outside all. I think I'm just going to pick a random direction. I could just pick a particular direction, but this might be more interesting. And I believe -1 gives you back, keep moving until you are outside of everything. Let me check that. Move outside all. Move outside solid. Move outside all is here. So moves the instance in the direction until it is no longer within a solid object. If there is no collision at the current position, it is not moved. You can specify the maximal distance to move and just use a negative number to move an arbitrary distance. That sounds exactly like what I want. Place my building. Look, it's a unit. I think what I want to do is also make the building solid and add in this collision with the buildings as well. Place a building, create a unit. There we go.